All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to Core Academy, where you can learn all things core with me, your current host, Slinkous. And today we are going to be doing, as the title correctly states, we're going to be making a global leaderboard. Now, I say today we're going to be making a global leaderboard. And what I mean is today we're going to be starting on the project that leads us to make a global leaderboard. This is a upcoming tutorial. It's not live yet, but it's in progress to help you not only learn the global leaderboard, but also combine it with managing how a project actually does networking. So we're going to start with that part. Today, we're going to be taking a bunch of server-side information and putting it on the UI. And then as we finish that, we will persist it through persistent storage, which we did last week. Check out the VOD. Not the most recent VOD with me, because that was on Thursday. We were making the potion shop, but before that, on Wednesday, you can check that out for a full overview of persistent storage, where we made a currency that you could pick up in the world and then persisted it so that every time we reconnect to the world, you still have that currency. Today, we will be working on a leaderboard, and we're going to be doing this basically through creating a speedrun timer. This template is not actually live on community content yet, but we'll republish when everything is in its final form. And we've got two things in here. We've got this thing called start finish line, which I will stick here, and then we will move the default floor accordingly. Okay. So that we now have a start line and a finish line. So if we look at what we've already got in this project, this is just using the rural road template. But we've got the basics. We've got a start line and a finish line. If I press V right now, you'll see that we've got some triggers. We've got a trigger for the start. We've got a trigger for the end. So if you want to get started on this now and you can't access this template, there is a template by Ephraim, which has very similar setup, besides the fact that they're interactable triggers that you're interacting with, but you could change the code to make them work on trigger, enter, and trigger exit. So to get started, let's look at what we have so far in the script. So looking at the script, I have two functions. This is basically straight out of the script generator generated script. And in it, we basically got two different triggers that we're referencing in this script. So if I look at the script in core content, open it up, I'll see it has finish line and start line, which are these two triggers. Already referenced in it. So it looks just like the generated script, but the big difference is that it has two different scripts. So the start line has an end overlap event, and the finish line has a begin overlap event. So we start timing when you cross the starting line, and we stop timing as soon as you cross the finish line. And what this uses, the magic that happens here is this right here. Let me just zoom in to, all right, that's a little much. This guy, time, right here, time. So this is some core magic that gives you, if you are used to using Lua in other contexts, then you might have done, I think it's os.getTime to get the time on your user's local computer. But we use time. Time just gives you back the number of seconds it has been since the server started. And so what this allows us to do is to get basically the number of seconds that it has been since the server started when you stop. Oops. Subtract the number of seconds it has been when you get to the finish line, and the difference between those, subtract the number of seconds it's been from the time when you started. Anyway, this is the time when you started, and basically get those as a time, which then gives you how many seconds have elapsed, right? It's a pretty precise decimal, and we'll talk about that precision kind of as we go forward in this challenge. And then we've got this, it looks like a complicated construction where I've got player table and then square brackets player name and then square brackets something in quotes. There's a lot going on. So we're just going to start with a quick diagram of what we're doing with this player table. So we know that first thing we do is we set it up here as player table. And to do that, we're going to go to REPL which I've used for demos in the past. Beautiful. And then we'll make a new REPL. And this is going to be called Languages Lua, as you could have guessed, and we'll call it Player Table. So let's say we've got this local player table, right? And in the version on our, let's see, let me make this a little bigger. So in the version that we had in the script, we started out as empty here. We just say local player table. And then we have this weird thing where we say, if not player table player name, then player table player name. So let me just copy this. And I'm going to just make a player. Okay, player.name is actually hard. So we're just going to call it player name like this equals, and we'll make it last person. Oh, it's Stanzil again. So we've got this. This is my player name. And then I'm going to I just copied and pasted this in. And the one thing is, because I don't really have like a player here, I'm going to change this from player.name to just a variable called player name. Okay. So basically what we said here is, let me change that too. Check the player table and see if there's something in it called player name, right? So we could, let's see here, let's comment this for a second and let's just try doing this. Player table, square bracket, player name. Well, okay, this is just a declaration, no wonder. Okay, print player table player name. Let's send that through. Okay, so we're gonna send that through and it says nil. There's nothing there. Now, if I say, if not nil print, then print, I guess not nil is true. Okay. And we basically, what we now know is if you have not and then something that's nil, so something that doesn't exist, right? Then if evaluates that to true. So this is really nice. You can say, if not this thing, do this. And that says, hey, if there isn't something here yet, do this. So I could say, let's say local, so let's say we say local my name and I don't define it, right? Then I can say, if not my name, right? If there isn't anything there, then we could do something. We could say print, what's your name? Question mark, right? So we'll do this. Okay. So, and I'll skip this one right now, although it's a really great illustration, and we'll set that up. And it's like, I don't know what your name is, right? And then I can say, okay, and if it does exist, let's do something else. Print, hello, comma, space, dot, my name, right? So we'll do this and we'll get, well, what's your name? And I could also say my name equals Slinkous, right? Actually, let's pick somebody else. We'll do K-pop sim and we'll run and it says, hello, K-pop sim. A little caps case because I'm in the habit of it. So this is really useful. And if you've seen this, this construction before, this is what we're going through. So, okay. So now basically what I say is if a player is not, so we're going to actually delete all of this. If the player does not exist, then we want to put them on the table, right? So here I said, here's a player table, it's empty. Here's a player name, it's Stanzilla. If that person is not in my player table, put them in the player name table as their own empty table. So basically we're gonna do this test, right? Let me move this. I'll move this up at the top here so that you still have it, but we can scroll past it because it's really useful information, right? We're gonna print Stanzilla in the table before if statement and after it, and we'll find that, okay, this is broken for some reason. So let's just go back to the script again, so we can go. So basically what we know now is if I say, okay, if this player isn't in my player table yet, then we're going to put them in. We're going to give them an entry, and then they're going to have an empty table inside of the table. So it's a table full of tables. It's tables all the way down. No. Okay. Well, it is. We're gonna have a table for tables because I want to have the player, and then I want to have different properties of the player. And as we see, one of those is gonna be start time, and then eventually, because I didn't think about what this means in computer, the other one is called run time, which in this case is how long the run took. So what we're going to do, let's just keep going, we'll just keep reading through this code, is we say, okay, if the player's not in the table, then add them in, right? So then after this point, no matter what, you are already either on the table or I just added you on and you have no values. And then what we're going to say is, okay, so find the player in the table, which we know is player table square brackets player name. And then inside of that player's table, find something called start time or make something called start time, either way, and set it to time, which we explained in the beginning is the number of seconds since the server did it. I can call time on the client, I can call time on the server. It's really useful, and it just gives me a number with a decimal number of how long it's been, right? And then in this case, I print the player's start time. Okay, so that's when we end overlap with this trigger here. So once we leave it, you could go either way, it doesn't actually matter, but one of these is going to create a faster time. So we're going to get that start time and we're going to put it on the player table, right? And that's going to be when you leave it. Now, when you begin overlap with the finish line, right? So back to the project, this guy over here, as soon as you get into this trigger, right? Again, it doesn't care about direction. But I was actually, before I did this, I'm like, man, do people just do times based on like how long it took you to get to the final thing? And secretly, this is a secret, I can fly in Tower of Terror. So I went to Tower of Terror and I flew up to the top and got my first time under 9 minutes yet, just to test that is a fine way to do it, because if it's fine there, then right, it's got to work. So yeah, so really you could take this project, just take these triggers out, forget everything about the road and the letters and what have you, and use that to set up a timer in any of your spaces, how long it takes there. So I'm going to just keep going through code while we're looking at this. So now we have our player table. We're going to add a new field to the table of the player that we're going to get whatever the current time is minus whatever time we started, right? Because that's how much time passed. That's the delta. And then after I save this to the player table, we also print it so we can check it out. So let's just, tons of introduction we've done so far. Let's actually run this guy. So here I am. You were allowed to be jealous of my costume. I'm going to run from the start. Oh, I didn't actually keep the event log up because I wanted you to see how beautiful this is. So away we run. All right. And we'll stop there and we'll see in our event log that when we started, we got a time that was 1894.12. And when we ended, we got a time that was 5.36. So the 1894 was the time on the server when we started, just so that we know that that's working, right? That number should always go up as long as I have the project open, I believe. And then the 5.36 is the time it actually took me to run across those triggers. So let's figure out how to put this in our UI. So in the project template, I have two things. I had the start and finish line, and then I had this time display, which we're going to drop in now. And it's over sort of irritatingly in this corner underneath where core puts essential information, and we've got 3 fields. So in the end, we're going to have the current time of our run, our personal best time, and then the world record. And we're going to use that global leaderboard to keep track of the world record. And that's the end of this project. So for right now, time display is actually already in a client context. So what I want to do, and I put these texts, they're all children of each other, so that basically each of them could be attached to the one below it and anchored to the one below it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a script, create new script, and I'm going to call this one timer client. So that we can kind of see. One of them is called timer start stop. You could call that timer server because it's the one that's actually working with the server. And we're going to add this into time display. We're going to de-instance time display so that we can add this into time display. And then it's going to need a record for all 3 of these texts. So right now the timer does not have the custom properties that I want. So I need it, right, what we're about to do right now, to know current time, best time, and world time. And we put them there. So we're going to take current time, best time, and world record, and we're going to put them all as custom properties on the script. So that lets me reference them in the script. So that is, doesn't broadcast only work? So no, actually. So right now we're actually going to do from server to client. But when you do server to client, you need to use either broadcast to players. So say you're making an update that is specific to one player, then we're going to use that's the one we're going to be using today, unless we get to confetti, which we'll see. We'd have to get through the leaderboard. So I think this is going to be a two-parter. So join me again next Wednesday and we'll get the second half of this thing. Or you can use broadcast to all players if it's something that needs to be updated on client side for everyone. And if you use broadcast to player, the first parameter is going to be the player that you're broadcasting to, which we're about to do. So we've got these three things, which are current time, best time, and world record. And I'm going to take my script and I'm just going to paste them right there. So that's all we've got here, right? And so just to test that these things are working, we're going to say, because this has already got wait for object, we're going to say prop current time, prop best time. And we really don't need to keep this. We're going to have something else that sets this up eventually. And world record. And I'm going to say dot text equals current time, like that, right? And let's just be really lazy about this. Copying and pasting is how we roll. And this will be best time. That's sort of your personal best. And this is going to be world record. Right? Okay. So we've got these three things, and now with the script already running in the client, if its references are good, then when I press play, I get, and it's a little bit covered up right now, but you can see current time, best time, and world record. And they aren't set to anything. They aren't hooked up to things. Okay. So now we're going to get a time, and we want to send it to the client so that the client updates UI, because UI has to be client side, right? Because what shows on my screen on a UI should be different from yours, right? And especially because you and I are going to have different times. I want to see my best time, not anyone's. Well, I want to see the all-time best time we all want to see, right? And we'll do that. We're gonna right now get the time that we get in our first script, and we're gonna send it over to the other one to update. Okay, so that means here I've got this, or we're gonna update a current time. So this is when we got runtime. So now I'm going to broadcast, and I'm going to make my own event. So I'm going to say events dot broadcast to player. Now in this case, the player, I made this variable. So if you use the trigger script, it does this check for you, which it calls the thing that overlapped the trigger other. And then it says if other is a player, and then we put all of our code in there, right? Because we probably don't want something of like if it's a projectile or something like that that overlaps the trigger, but that might be useful in other contexts. Or a sword or something like that. That's really useful. But in this case, we only want it to be a player. So then I made another variable that said, okay, whoever other is, it's player now, so that I can just say player. So if you're using this script and you don't add this line, you're going to need to use other everywhere I use player. Okay, so that is if you open the script generator and you pick trigger, begin, end, overlap. It will give you basically this code in a can, and you can attach it to a trigger. By default, it's going to want that trigger to be the parent, so you'll stick the script on the trigger. So we've got this, and yeah, and this is giving us, right now it's just printing it and it's saving in the player table. So now we want to broadcast to the player, right? The player is player, and we need to name this event. So what do we want to do? We want to say update current time, and I'm going to make it all one word. I think usually events are lowercase, but I'm going to keep it this way because I make I have a tendency to make functions lowercase. Okay, we're going to call it update current time, and then we're going to give them the time to update. Well, what's the time to update? It's this thing right here. Look in your player table, find my player in the player table, and then find runtime in the player table. So we're going to broadcast that, and out of the box, it's going to do nothing. It's going to broadcast. It won't be broken because it doesn't hurt to broadcast something that's not getting received. It won't do anything, but I don't think. And we'll cross this line, and we don't get any errors. It's fine, but it probably does broadcast. So now we need to get in the client side, and we need to receive it, right? So let's make a function called change current time, right? We could say, or set current time, let's say. And it's going to take time as a parameter, right? Makes sense? In this case, we're going to say prop current time dot text equals current time space ... and then we're going to get a time, but the time is not a string. And if we want to use ... to put two strings together, they need to be two strings. So we'll use the to string, and then we'll put whatever the time was, right? Because the time's going to be a decimal number. Okay. So we've got that. Now we need to connect it to the broadcast event. So let me just side by side these so we can see them together, and see how much we can shrink that. Right now it's using update current time and it's broadcasting that. So we're going to say events.connect, and you don't have to do anything fancy on this side because to it, it's just an event that showed up, right? Update current time. And we're going to, the function that we're going to connect to that is this one we just made, set current time. Okay, so let's see this in action. So we're going to press play and run across the start line. And, oh, all right. I hope you guys missed it, but it now put it in my UI as the time. Okay, I'm going to show you my technique. Let's say we want exactly 2 decimals. There might be better ways, but let's just go ahead and do this, right? So we'll take time, and we'll say formatted, local formatted time. Okay, so let's say I didn't want it to have a decimal at all. What would I do? Well, I would say time math.floor, right, which is just cut off the decimal. Time, right? So we'll do that and we'll get only the seconds. So we'll press play. It's a little bit covered up right now, but oh wait, sorry, just kidding. I didn't change the one that goes into the thing. So I called this, but we're just using time. So we'll call this formatted time. Formatted time. Right? Like that? Okay, sorry, this is a little busy. Let's just put this one together. Okay, so now okay. Okay, so current time is 5. It just cut it off. Now that's not the level of precision that we need. We need like 2 decimal places of precision, right? Here's what you do. So we said, okay, right now we're rounding down time. So what we're going to do is we're going to round it down, but to those 2 decimals. How do we do that? We multiply it by 100 and then divide it by 100. Okay, so what does that mean? I multiplied it by 100, rounded it down so that any decimal after that got cut off, and then I divided it by 100 so it'd be the same number. That is the answer. So let's make sure that's saved. Says it's updated twice, and hopefully we have enough room that it's not just truncating it on there. 5.39. Ta-da! Yeah, that's like an old programmer trick that, you know, you learn, and then we end up with like lots of languages have like fancy stuff for us, so we can just say that 5.39. That's it. It's so formatted, right? So if you were doing like money or something like that, this would be a really nice one because you just only ever want those 2 decimals. Yeah. This is, okay, so now you can see one of the flaws in this is that I'm going to keep getting a current time anytime I pass the finish line based on what my last start time was. But that's not actually going to mess up my best time. It's not going to be inaccurate. Okay, so we've got one thing passed, and let's just one more time, we'll go over this so we can see what happens. On the server side one, I do events.broadcast to player for the player because it's the player who overlaps the trigger, right? And we want them to have their own start time and their own end time, and I broadcast to player and I say which player. I named the event, I called it update current time, and then I also gave them the time, which is inside of this player table, and we talked about how that worked in the beginning. So, okay, so that's what we've done so far. This is how you pass information to client. If you wanted to activate a thing like that, you just use broadcast to player, or if everybody's supposed to do it, broadcast to all players, right? And then you don't have to say which player, which is really nice. It just depends on your circumstance. So like what we're gonna do way down the line is when we get a new world record, we're going to do some special effects on everybody's screen because that's news for all of us. So this is what we did. We said, okay, broadcast to player and update. We're gonna go back to our server side one and let's figure out your best time. So I'm going to create a new script down here and it's going to be called, okay. let's get the timer going because I think that's more interesting and I think that's what we have time for. Okay, so right now I don't see the time that's happening, right? And if I want to display the time in the box, so what we're going to do now is we're like, okay, right now when I start, it just says nothing, right? And then I finish and it gives me a time, right? But I'd actually like to see that timer going, right? That would be ideal. Now, this client, right, we're going to get this going on the client side, and then we're going to see the differences between them. Okay, so I'm going to take out this broadcast so it doesn't update it anymore, okay? Just for a second. But it's still going to print it in my event log. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to make a variable that starts a timer. So we're going to say time started equals false. Okay. And then we're going to start a timer. So we're going to say function start timer. And it's not gonna have anything in it for now. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna say start time. We need a start time. So start time, and it's not gonna equal anything else. So we need these to be local, excuse me. All right, so that's a variable. This is a variable, and then start time is a variable. And then we're gonna do kind of just like we did here, where we're gonna say, okay, start time equals whatever time it is on the server, right? And we're gonna say, and we started the clock. Time started equals true, right? And then we're going to use the tick function to have it continuously update the time. So I'll say function tick, or I have to say function trick, and then treat tick. And what we'll do is we're going to say if, okay, we can do this two ways, right? All right, we're going to do this. We're going to do this the correct way. So we're going to say if time started. So if I've started the time, then what I want you to do is set current time to, we'll say set current time to the time on the server minus the start time. Right, so we're doing the exact same thing that we did before, right? And then we also need to stop timer, right? And that is going to be, all we're going to do is say that time has not started anymore. So we'll say time started equals false. Okay, you with me so far? Okay, so now we're going to connect these to the triggers, right? So again, client side this thing. And then over here on the triggers, we're going to get it to work. So now we're going to say, okay, what I need to do is I need to broadcast an event. So on the end overlap, which is what starts the time, I'm going to say events dot broadcast to player. We're going to say start timer, right? And then first thing is the player, of course. And then we're going to broadcast an event called start timer. And it doesn't actually have any inputs, so I don't need to send anything else. It will eventually, though, which we'll talk about. And then we'll grab this. And over here, when we cross the finish line, we're going to change this thing to just say stop timer. Okay, so what were the steps so far? We made the functions of what we want to do. We went back to the script that's going to broadcast the signal to do this from the server to the client. And then on the client, we need to take our functions and connect them to that broadcast, right? So for start timer, I'm going to say events.connect start timer. And these have the same name, and I don't think that's a problem. Start timer, right? And then you can guess what we're going to do for the second one, which is that we're going to connect this to stop timer. So this is going to be stop, and this is going to be stop. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, so what we're hoping is that this will set itself to 0 as soon as we cross the start line, and count up continuously until we get to the end. And in the event log down here, I'm going to get the final time, hopefully. I think it's still printing. Let's just double check that because that's really interesting. Okay. Because that is the problem I want to solve before this stream ends. Yeah. Where are we? So here, when we cross this, I also still want it to print the runtime, which it does. Okay, and I actually don't need it to print the start time anymore because we already saw that that's like the number of seconds since the server started. We know that it's been going up as long as I've been doing this stream. And you guys can't read this super well, but okay. So here we go. We've got this giant time UI and it's counting up. You guys see it counting up? Okay. So here is the thing, is that the current time on here says, I'm going to pause here, exactly 5.4. The time on the server, however, is 5.418145. So this is not a level of precision. This is actually the delay, right, between sending the signal to the client and then back to the server. All right, one more test. Yeah, it's definitely 2 decimals. Yeah, 3.57, and this one had 3.599. Actual time with no delay. Well, time is still a social construction. So what we're gonna do is we're going to actually keep the precise time that's on the server, right? Including actually the full decimals. And then what we display here is going to be so this one had 0.02 of a millisecond difference, almost 3 depending on the truncation, right? So this is for display purposes. And when we actually save the time, we're going to save the server time because that's the one that's going to be fairest between the players. It's the most objectively correct. So how do we give the player a timer that's showing off client side but still gives them that? And the answer is we fake it slightly. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have the timer start and stop the way we did, but when it stops, we're going to shove the server time in there. So it's gonna be, let's get the code out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take back the update current time, and we're just going to call this right afterwards. So this is basically going to stop the timer and it's going to change the time to exactly the server time. And then the way we update the time, this is still going to format it. So it will still be it'll still be truncated the way we've done. And we could also do this for the timer if we wanted to. Actually, no, set current time is also rounding in that one. Yeah, okay, cool, we're good. Because we rounded in that down to the 2 decimals, we've set it up. Okay, so now you shouldn't really see that much of a difference, but except that these are gonna match now. So it is up to everyone to see if they can actually detect a moment where the speed appears to be inconsistent. But let me get on my horse. And we're going to gallop across here. We've got the time. You can see it counting up. And we get here and it stops at 3:59. So, I mean, yes, it's all using server time. It's calculating it the same way. But basically, as long as I stick with the server, I will have a fair system that is calculating everybody the same way. And that's really the most important thing, right? And honestly, like, you can't really see the difference. But I do want players to, one, understand what their timer is doing so they can be like, oh man, we're so close. We're so close to getting in under 3 seconds, under 3 seconds, under 3 seconds. Okay, not quite under 3 seconds, right? And actually this is 3.5955, right? And when I'm keeping this data in the player table, I'm actually keeping the whole decimal, so I can be pretty precise about it. Now, what that really means, but in terms of what we can do with this, there's a lot of cool potential here. And we basically now got a setup where we're showing the players the correct, accurate time, but we're also making sure that it's consistent with the server. Okay. So that was that magic, and we've got about 8 minutes left. So let's go ahead and try to calculate a best time. Okay, so we'll go just to our server-side script. And in here, we're gonna make a new function called calculate best time, right? Function calculate best time, right? Okay, and it's gonna be new time. All right, we'll say update best time for right now. And okay, so now we've got the same problem that we had before, right? Which is that I know for certain that my player does not, in my player table, there is no best time property. There's a start time and there's a run time, but there is no best time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing as I did before, right? Which is that basically I'm gonna say, okay, look in your player table, find the player name and see if they have a best time, right? And if they don't, well, then the time that I give them, whatever time that is the best time, right? So we'll say player table, player name, best time, right? Is the time that we just gave you, this new time that I'm submitting to this function, right? Whatever time I give you. It just is that, right? Okay, so that's, we don't have a best time. That's easy, right? It's whatever, your best time is your most recent time, right? Okay. And then we also need to figure out how do we figure out if this is your best time, right? So if not, yeah, we can go ahead and we'll stick this in an else. Let's do it this way. We're gonna say if player table, right, your current best time, which I can grab like this. It's a little bit of a mouthful, and actually once we make it a player data, persistent data, it's going to be a little bit easier. So we're going to say player table best time is greater than new time, right? Or we can say, let's do it. The correct way, we'll say if your new time is less than your best time, right? Because lower times are better. New time is less than your best time. Then what? Let's see, no parentheses. Sorry, guys. Old habits die hard. Right, then the current time is your new best time. So I can do it just like this. All right. And if not, just don't do anything. We're fine, right? But let's say no matter what, whether or not you had a best time yet or you didn't, let's go ahead and imagine that we're going to broadcast this over to our script, which displays it. So we'll say events.broadcast again to player, right? And it's just one player because it's each player's individual best time, right? Player. Oh, we need a player, don't we? Update best time player new time. There we go. We fixed it. Because we've been referencing player this whole time, but didn't have them in there. I'm a fool. That's the player that we're going to broadcast this to. And we're going to call this show best time, right? And then we'll give them whatever the player's best time is, which in most cases is new time, but in some cases might be their old one. So it's always going to be this value, so we'll just stick that in there. Boom. You guys excited? Okay. So we've got that, and then we're going to go back to our client side, and we're going to make a thing that changes the best time. So I can really look at set current time like this. And actually, let's just copy this whole thing, and we'll put it right underneath. And instead of set current time, we're going to say set best time. It's still got a time. We don't have to deal with the player anymore because this is just for whichever player got this sent to them, right? And then we'll change this to best time. And then we want to change it so that's not changing the current time one, but the best time one. So that one's also called prop best time. So that's it. Other than that, it's exactly the same. And then we're going to say it's going to be called show best time, right? And the function is called set best time. Okay. So we made a function called set best time. It takes a time in it. And we're doing that rounding trick that we did. And then we'll say the best time.text equals the words best time plus the formatted string that we made of the rounded down version. And then we connected it to that event. So we're going to do this show best time and set the best time. And then the only thing that's missing is that we don't actually call this on our server. So now when I update, oh wait, yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We send this update message whenever we update best time. We never call update best time. That's it. So basically whenever you end, right now, I would like to update best time for the player who's called player. And the other thing I need is the new time. And that is going to be player.currenttime.runtime, like that. So it's either going to become the new best time or it won't, and this function here is going to figure it out. It's also going to say also change that on the client side. So we've got a lot of different tendrils going out at the same time. But let's try it out. And we're going to start the time. And look at that. Our most recent time was our best time. We did it. So, all right. So let's gallop on through and let's update our best time. Because presumably I am faster. We'll get a little drift in there. Get going. And yeah, now we have a new best time. But as you guys can probably guess, all right, it's 1 o'clock. So I guess we'll persist this next time. You can kind of, if you think you can figure that out on your own, you can set that up. But you can see now I don't have a best time. Now I also don't have any command to display a best time at the beginning anyway, so this isn't actually a great test for it. But next time, we're going to save your best time on you as a character so that we can always pull that up. And then we're also going to make a leaderboard so that we can always find the world record best time. So we'll use the leaderboard and we'll use the leaderboard entry object to check those things out. So tune in next week to get the second part of actually making the leaderboard. And in between that time, hopefully this Friday, you can expect the actual tutorial version of this. So for a complete walkthrough using the community content, you can have access to this beautiful start and finish line that we've been talking about. That is what you can look forward to in the future. And yes, again, go to the Core Academy Discord, check it out give me your suggestions on tutorials you'd like to see, stuff that you're confused about. We'll have the written version of it coming out soon, and I'll announce it on Core Academy when that comes out as well. But we're working on more tutorials to help answer the questions that you have to help you guys make better games. So anything you're thinking like, man, if I could just do this, I could make a better game, tell us. Also, you can @me on Twitter about any feedback, commentary, stuff like that. Totally interested in that. Use hashtag Core Academy for stuff that you've made if you're displaying, and of course, hashtag Creative with Core, so that we all see and promote your stuff and think you're amazing. And yes, good luck out there, and enjoy passing data from a server side to UI.